I am Shush, and you are watching World Music Views.
So, welcome to World Music View.
Yo,
Shit,
mean
Liguz.
technology.
Is your last name Liguz?
Liguz, yeah, but well, it's now Starkey, but it's Shush Liguz.
Shush, look, that's your original. Where did that name come from?
Shush or my last name?
No, the both of them. Like, where did Shush come from?
Uh,
How did you get your name?
because I don't shut up, basically. I mean, my given name is Shana, and then when I was in art school, a friend of mine just shortened it to Shush because I'd often say inappropriate things at inappropriate moments, and that kind of stuck. I never really stopped doing that, and so the name stuck. And now it feels more natural to be called Shush than Shana. Um, so it's I think even my parents sometimes call me Shush, but it's always I always feel like when I'm being called Shana that I'm going to get into trouble in some form.
So, you grew up in Australia. Tell me about that.
I, I did. I grew up in a place called. I grew up in. I was born up in a place called Byron Bay, which is kind of. It's quite famous now as a holiday. It's basically paradise. It's very similar to Jamaica with the rainforest and the beach and the ocean and just the kind of relaxed vibe of it. And they do. There's a real kind of creative community up there. I mean, it's now gone, blockbuster, and people like the Helmsworths have bought property there, Zac Efron. It's basically turned into a version of Hollywood because they filmed Pirates of the Caribbean just up the road and all of this sort of stuff. So, but that was where I grew up, there between there and Bondi Beach in Sydney. But so my formative years were spent in the ocean, and also they have festivals there. There's one called Byron Bay Blues Festival, which I think that the obviously it's a different lineup of the Wailers, but I'm pretty sure they played there a few years ago. And it has huge acts going through there. And then in with I was lucky enough that my dad was a music photographer. So growing up, I would go to all of the gigs. Just basically, I would get grounded and then get taken out to go to a music concert. So that kind of shifted my kind of a relationship with authority, as it were. But because my dad was on the dole with UB4. Both my parents are English, but I was born in Australia. But my dad is from Birmingham. He was on the dole with UB40, so and he very nearly became a member of UB40, but became a photographer instead. And so every time they would come out to Australia, we would link up, and they were basically like my godparents. And by losing Astro recently was tough. I mean, I hadn't seen him for a long time. We'd communicated about doing some music together with him and Ali for the U-Roy project, and it didn't end up happening, which unfortunately. But
So,
yeah, it was.
you went to art school, right? I want to deal with Australia leaving and going into England to where
Uh,
you went to art school to do art.
to do art, yeah, I did. I won. I won a prize. I came first in the state for art when I finished high school, and I did this weird kind of thing with high school where I did a degree at the same time as doing my high school certificate. I got a degree in media and entertainment and majored in stage lighting. And so I had kind of already combined uni with high school at the same time. and then went straight to another university. And so that I spent more time kind of, experiencing life than actually going to art school. And kind of I joined bands, and we played around Sydney a lot. And then I made my way over to England after had met Zach in Australia. And then we linked up. I went to LA, and he was doing the Oasis records, and on my way to England, and then we ended up forming a band together, and the rest is history, really.
The band is called the Penguins.
That was Penguins, yeah, Penguins, then Penguins Rising, and we've had Zach plays the guitar in that, like he does with most of the records that we do here in Jamaica. And we had something like 11 drummers come through. It was a lot, but they're big shoes to fill. And then we changed the name to Sshh, and we did this record, Issues, which was a covers record that we did for Teenage Cancer Trust, which is kind of what ended up bringing us here to Jamaica in the first place. And which was incredible, doing Get Up, Stand Up with Sandra and Fully from the original Word, Sound and Power and Soul Syndicate. And we basically never left. But I had my own deal, or Sshh, the band, had its own deal with BMG as an artist. And we put a single out and, did a tour of Australia with an English band called Primal Scream, and Liam Gallagher, who's the lead singer of Oasis, did a load of gigs. And also in that year we had moved to New Orleans for 6 weeks and done something like 15 gigs in that, that was Austin. But we started in New Orleans, and we played with Cyril Neville, and we did a session with Ivan Neville from the Neville Brothers and the Meters. And by the end of it, we started by playing these really dodgy little clubs. And by the end of it, we made it to Bourbon Street, and we did a gig with Zigaboo and George Porter Jr. So that was kind of, that was quite gladiatorial, let's say, on this, to be on stage. It was a massive honor, but it's also kind of you really have to be able to hold your ground when you're playing with musicians of that sort of caliber. And, it can be quite intimidating, but I think that really prepared us for when we came to Jamaica to do this, play at the Peter Tosh thing, was because we had kind of, cut our teeth with, a few months prior being thrown in the deep end in the New Orleans scene. It kind of, we were able to hold our own with, or at least kind of float with the legs going massively crazy underneath the water, with all of the musicians that we played with. We worked with the original rhythm sections. So with the Sex Pistols, for example, that was the first and only time that Paul Cook and Glenn Matlock, who was the original bass player before Sid Vicious, Paul Cook was the drummer. It's the first and only time that they have played together outside of the Sex Pistols. And so for them to kind of come together and play again was really quite something. And we called it the Shush Pistols, and we did a few gigs, and it was, as soon as they switched on, it was the Sex Pistols. It was incredible.
You literally worked with the Sex Pistols and the rock.
Yeah, and the guy who produced it was, I think it was, his name's Chris Kimsey, and he was the guy who had originally produced the Sex Pistols. So, and on the Rut session, I believe it was Youth who produced it. And we did a one with Amy Winehouse's band, who I think it was Ian Brody. No, that was Youth who produced it. But we worked with a load of different producers, a load of different bands. And the way that we, and we were giving the proceeds were going to Teen Cancer Trust. But we were putting it out through, we didn't have a label deal at the time, so we were putting it out through, we had distribution through an online source that then turned out to be a bit sketchy. And so I think that was the issue.
Is that why the album has not been out as yet?
It has been out.
It has been out.
No, that's how we ended up being invited to play at the Peter Tosh Foundation.
Okay.
From that album.
Mm-hmm. I saw a performance of you doing Get Up, Stand Up. The full wood of Peter Tosh, Word, Sound, and Power.
Yeah,
your voice is exceptional. It's just, and Zach told me you did it in one take.
Well, we'll say about that. I can't remember. It was a long time ago, and I've had a kid since then, so I don't remember a lot of things.
When was it? When did you do that?
I think it was 2015 or 2016, maybe. I mean, that was really intimidating. I mean, that was prior to New Orleans. So that was because with the other bands who we had done previously, we had a relationship with the people who we were doing with it, and we either knew them from before or we'd worked with them. Whereas with Fully and Forward and Santa Davis, that kind of just happened so quickly. We were doing a different session, and then the next day we were doing Get Up, Stand Up, and it was with these living legends, and it's also such a powerful and provocative song that we really, you want to handle with care, and respect, and kind of, it's almost like sacrilegious if you mess something like that up. So we were very kind of conscious of, honoring and respecting the message and the performance behind, but like that came before, of the original and of the Peter Tosh version, who helped write it, so it is still the original, but just like a remix, as it were. But
I love that. So how did you guys fall in love with Jamaica? Yeah, you come here, but
how could you not fall in love with Jamaica, I think, is the question. I mean, I think that there's so much going for it, Jamaica. There's I think it's probably one of the only places on the planet that when you say the word Jamaica, it represents so much. It represents music, it represents religion, it represents food, it represents fashion. The amount of talent that is here is second to none in the world. For such a small island to have such a huge global impact is incredible. And I think it's finally, I think that it's underrated, and it needs to be celebrated and respected a lot more than it is in the realms of hip hop and rock and roll, and and fashion and food, all of it. I think it really needs to, and I think that there is now globally there seems to be an awakening to like, oh, hang on a minute, this has been inspiring us for years, you know, like, you know, we've got the picture of Bob behind you. I mean, I think what Chris Blackwell did with Bob, marketing him as a rock star, not just a reggae star, was a very clever thing to do to kind of bring it to a wider audience. And, you know, and obviously there's Grace Jones, who is a global superstar and icon, on the disco kind of element of things. But, you know, there's everything here. There's music, there's food, there's coffee. The coffee here is incredible. The chocolate, it's, you know, the people, the vibe, it's incredible. And I think as well, when you look at what's going on in the rest of the world, I feel much safer in Jamaica than I do in America or even England, because it's messed up out there.
In terms of the music, right? What do you think about the current music that's being released out of Jamaica, the dancehall trap vibe?
I mean, I think that there seems to be, I like it. I think that there seems to be a bit of a roots revival happening with, you know, Chronics and Protege and Coffee and Leela. It's kind of, I mean, and Jesse Royal. I mean, there's so many young artists who are bringing that element back into the music, and it's not just purely electronic. But I think that there's also like a fusion happening, where it's modern. It doesn't just sound like they're only just trying to recreate the sounds of the past. It's moving forward. So I'm into it. I'm all for it. I think that it just needs to be heard by more people, and I think more people's ears are opening up. I mean, the whole thing with Afrobeat blowing up how it has now. I mean, you know, Justin Bieber's done an Afrobeat song. I think that you can safely say it's crossed over when that guy does it. And now there's this Ed Sheeran tune coming out. Shauna, yeah. So I think that it's stepping up on a global scale, and it's not just a niche market. It's so much more.
So the music you're making now is on the Trojan Jamaica, which is a derivative of the original Trojan. It's a license of the name.
Well, what we did was we licensed the name because we both had distribution through BMG, and so
as in you and Zach had distribution.
No, Trojan original to the Trojan catalog is owned by BMG and distributed by BMG, who also, which is a major record label, like along the line. There's Universal, BMG, Sony, Columbia,
Warner.
Warner's, exactly. The big monster companies, and then they have their kind of subsidiaries. And so BMG owned Trojan, and we had a distribution deal through BMG, so we were able to license the name Trojan, but we made Trojan Jamaica. It's a separate entity, because a lot of the older artists that we were working with had been on the original Trojan, and we wanted to kind of give it back to them in a way, and which is something that they were all wholeheartedly into. But now we are moving forward with a new. But so the records that we put out, like the Toots and the Maytals record, the U-Roy record, the Red, Gold, Green and Blue and the remix of that was all Trojan Jamaica. But now moving forward, we're going to be operating as a new entity.
Which is a different label?
It's a different label. It's more of a production company than an actual record label.
What's it called?
Jamaica Sound System. Jamaica Sound System, which we did a collaboration with a headphone company called Meet, which is called Meet the Meters Headphones. Yeah, so from Trojan Jamaica, we gave birth to Jamaica Sound System, which is a derivative, which is basically a production company, because we basically produced, as well as running Trojan Jamaica, we produced a lot, or co-produced pretty much everything, the music that was made, whether it was with Youth or Sly and Robbie or Toots. I mean, Toots produced a lot of the music that he had already done for Got to Be Tough. We just kind of helped by going in and, you know, tweaking it. But with we still have loads of material with people like Cecile and Tanya Stevens and Big Youth and Jesse, and we're still kind of wanting to make new music as well, and release it. So that would be done under Jamaica Sound System.
I want to get into, like, what's your now contribution to Jamaica's music ecosystem? What's your commitment to reggae like?
I mean, unwavering, I suppose. I mean, you know, we try to with the records that we made, you know, we used pretty much all Jamaican artists. When we built the studio that we had, we used a full Jamaican team. I mean, we have you know, people like David Sardi mix things in LA to give it a kind of tougher, or the toughest kind of a rock and roll edge that you can, because he mixed, you know, he's a producer who worked with Oasis. He just did the Who album. But you know, we very much believe in the music of Jamaica, and we really think that, you know, that it needs to have a global platform. And as I say, I really think that the world is kind of waking up on a bigger scale to that. But that's always been our goal, is to you know, get on the roof, shout it from the rooftops, and, you know, listen to this music. It's really good. It's not a niche market. You know, and just kind of try to carry on doing that as much as we can. But you know, as I say, we've worked with some of the giants of Jamaican music, who unfortunately are no longer with us, like Roy and Toots and Robbie Shakespeare. You know, so we've been really blessed in being able to have had that experience. That was always our mission, was to kind of give these guys a global platform. And, you know, and it was really sad that, you know, I mean, it's heartbreaking that when Toots passed, you know, the record went to #1 all around the world, and obviously won the Grammy. And the fact that he wasn't able to kind of have that victory lap, you know, but he was still, he did such a, like, he was doing loads of press for it, with like Vogue and New York Times and Interview magazine and all of these really kind of, you know, mainstream media outlets. And so he was able to see the love that the world still had for him, or has for him, and the world was able to see that he still had the talent to produce great music. You know, he'd written such classic like Funky Kingston and 5446 and Bam Bam and all of that kind of those his kind of the original two songs, but to be able to show that he still had such great writing skills and performing skills, I think was brilliant for the world to see. But it was just really, it was bittersweet because he knew what the love he was getting back already from these interviews and in the press and stuff like that, but that he wasn't able to experience it when they go and collect the Grammy and, you know, and tour the album, because that's where he really came alive, was on stage, you know. And the same with you, Roy. We did a tour we took you, Roy, to Brazil at the beginning of 2020, and we did a tour there with him. And I mean, the crowds in South America are just crazy, like crazy big. I think we did one gig where there was like 250,000 people in the streets, and another one in Salvador where it's 100,000 people. And these people, like the reggae market in Brazil is massive, massive, and there were people coming and holding old copies of you Roy's vinyls, to like holding them up, dancing whilst he was toasting. And I think, and then asking him to sign them and do all of that sort of stuff. And so I think on the opposite end of the scale of Toots not being able to have done the tour and seen the love from the crowds, Roy was able to see the tour, do the tour, and see, or at least a small tour, but to so many people, and see all of these people, and young people, old people, like, you know, they're all he's multi-generational, you know, and they were in the he dancing, and him to be able to see that from all these years later that his legacy was still alive and kicking, was a beautiful thing. But then, you know, the fact that, and he passed before the record was able to, we were just getting ready to put his record out when he passed away. And you know, there was so many like messages and posts of condolences from people across the board, you know, from in hip hop and the music world, but then also like Jim Jarmusch, the filmmaker, who you would never have expected to, you know, be a U-Roy fan, you know, or be kind of plugged into that scene, because it's so far removed from what he usually does. But there it was, this global outpouring of love and respect across the board. And it was heartbreaking that it took him having to pass away for people to kind of for him to become not relevant, but that he wasn't able to see that, and that he wasn't able to experience the great reviews that his record got, and, you know, and tour it and have his victory lap as well.
How would you define your musical sound now, coming out of Jamaica Sound System and Trojan Jamaica? Like a simple definition of it, what would it be?
That's difficult. I mean, I would say that we try to do modern roots rock reggae, but it's you know, we kind of, yeah, modern roots rock reggae, I guess. I don't know. It's future dub. I mean, we have a lot. We're very influenced by dub. We work with scientists a lot. Um, so schizophrenic, maybe. Like there's a lot of different angles. So yeah, I would say modern roots rock reggae.
With house music coming back, do you think you'll get into that with Beyonce and Drake dropping house?
Well, I mean, we for the last single that we did for Trojan Jamaica, and which was you, Roy, Shaggy, Rule the Nation, was a Groove Armada remix. So we're already there, babe. Which, you know, Groove Armada were massive dance music and still are. And if I have had a career like spanning over 20 years, so yes, I would say that we are definitely onto the house music dance tip, because we already did it. Check it out, the Groove Armada remix of Shaggy and You Roy, Rule the Nation.
What are you working on next?
And next, we have a few different projects in the pipeline that I can't really divulge full details, but there's some exciting things on the horizon.
And as mommy to Luna, the superstar of the room, how are you managing and balancing mom and music and all of that?
I'm not. I mean, the great thing about Luna is that she's a very musical child, and you know, we've travelled around the world with her now, and we've always taken her into the studio with us, and she loves it. You know, she's our kind of compass. Or sometimes her legs start bouncing, but because we have a studio in England, we were working when I was pregnant, and we'd been home from the hospital like 3 days, and we were back in the studio, and she was in there with us. So it's kind of it's always been around her, and she is just alive with it. You know, I think it makes her feel she feels really comfortable in that environment, and because that's all she's known, and so we're really lucky that we've got such a groovy baby.
My last question is, tell me your top 5 reggae dancehall acts.
I don't know if I can do that. There's too many. Too many to list. I mean, it would have to be Toots, Sly and Robbie. I really like Chronics, Leela, Coffee, Jada Kingdom, Spice, Jesse Royal, Sly and Robbie. I think I've already said that one. Big Youth, Cecile, Tanya Stevens, Ryan King. I really like Black Hero. I don't know who else we got. Burning Spear. You know, it just, the list goes on. Vibes Cartel.
Oh, you hear about Vibes Cartel?
Yeah, man. Mm-hmm.